Let's get some more reaction on this story now. Gordon Holden is a former Canadian diplomat to China. He's now the director of the China Institute at the University of Alberta. Professor Holden joins me now from Seoul, South Korea, via FaceTime. So thank you. Minister Freeland just finished her press conference. China has confirmed that they have detained Michael Kovrig, but his whereabouts remain uncertain, as does the reason for his detention. I wonder, just writ large at this moment, what stands out for you about this case?
Well, I think that the arrest is not completely unexpected. When you have a case that's risen to the attention of the most senior levels of government, including probably the president, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in China is not the number one player. If this Michael's been swept up by the Ministry of State Security, it also indicates that the gloves have come off. I doubt that the Chinese will do us the courtesy of formally linking the case. They won't tell us that it's indeed in response to the Hmong detention, but I think we can be pretty confident that's exactly what it is. The lack of consular detention so far is also worrisome, as is the prospect that there be a second individual. This is all on the bad news side, but ironically, I think it makes it tougher for the government to not proceed with the judicial process in Canada. We can't be seen to be backing down in the face of the seizure of Canadians abroad.
With the case of that second individual, obviously there are a lot of details we do not have at this point. It is not entirely clear based on what the minister is saying that what's happened with this individual. But would it be surprising to you at this stage of the game to hear that a second Canadian had in fact been detained as part of this broader process?
It would surprise me to some extent. I would have thought, just guessing, based on their past behavior, that China would, with one individual already in detention, they'd wait to see how that played out and what was the Canadian reaction. There are tens of thousands of Canadian citizens in China at any given time. Why the rush? So I get you're quite right. We need to wait and see who is the person, whether indeed they have been detained. China is a fairly cautious player in these things. They take deliberate steps. I don't think normally that they'd wish to do something rash. It's possible they have a second individual, but let's wait and see.
In terms of the safety of Canadians in China, I wonder what you think of the government's move thus far not to change its travel advisory to China.
They are in a difficult place. If they move quickly to a don't go to China, postpone non-essential travel, postpone all travel, that will be seen as by the Chinese as an escalation, and the Chinese may well provide the same consular advice to their own citizens, and the vast numbers going in each direction at any given time. If they don't raise the risk level, and another Canadian or two is taken into detention, then they're open to criticism in that regard. The practical problem they have will be multiplied. I think they've probably got it about right for now. Watch very carefully and wait and see. This is not East Timor. There's a vast number of people and a vast amount of business and business people going back and forth at all times. Raising that consular level is a big next step, and I think being a little bit cautious about the timing is a good thing.
Well, and to some extent that really is about diplomacy, but I wonder, would you personally be comfortable going to China right now?
Well, I would still go, but I will confess a family member said they didn't think I should. I would, just on the basis of averages and chances, and I've never lived my life without taking any risks. I'm not about to start avoiding all risks, but I would certainly calculate it, and I think the minister's quite right. Take a careful look at that consular page and make sure it's current before you finalize your travel.
I do want to ask you about some of the information we're getting from Chinese state media about the situation of Michael Kovrig. They describe him as he's being questioned on suspicion of engaging in activities that harmed China's national security. When you hear that kind of language, what do you make of it?
I really don't like that language, particularly given if he has indeed been detained by Ministry of State Security. These is basically the state espionage and counter-espionage agency. It's powerful, reports the highest level of government. That kind of language might well be followed by a more formal detention or on the basis of espionage, which can be very broadly defined in China. No doubt he was in the information collection business, as in analysis, which is a pretty benign thing. A lot of journalists are doing exactly the same thing. But it's worrisome as a statement. But again, This is, in my view, a political detention. It would not have occurred without the Hmong detention. So the fact that it's occurred is just part of the Chinese game plan, a tit for tat in their view. In our view as Canadians, a completely different situation. One, someone detained under an extradition request for alleged violation of U.S. law. The other, a person picked up simply because it's a way of getting back, of retaliating.
Well, let's talk about how the comments by U.S. President Donald Trump might complicate that further. He told Reuters that he would intervene in Ms. Hmong's case if it would help secure a trade deal with Beijing. What do you think that does to this whole situation, and the situation Canada is in particular, as Canadians try to insist that this is not a political process?
I think the president, not for the first time, of course, really put the cat amongst the pigeons. If the detentions, in my view, make it more difficult for Canada not to proceed, we can't be seen to be caving in to blackmail, in effect, or having our citizens held as hostages. President Trump is pushed in the other direction. Indeed, the view of the government has been and is that the extradition treaty is there as part of the rule of law. It works in our benefit as well when it's getting Canadians who are charged back into Canada to face justice. But when the president hints at this is just part of a deal-making process where he could lift the charges, quash the extradition request as part of a broad trade deal, that's precisely the wrong signal for Canada. And I suspect, in fact, I've already seen some reaction from U.S. political players, Senate, and officials who are testifying that U.S. does not operate in this fashion. Well, they've now been contradicted by their commander-in-chief, by their president. I think this is problematic. We'll see if that's sustained. President Trump, it seems, shoots from the hip a lot. But if that's a sustained U.S. position, I think that does change the calculation in Ottawa somewhat.
Well, and we did hear from Foreign Affairs Minister Chrystia Freeland essentially a plea from extradition partners not to politicize the process, so it will certainly be something to watch. Thank you very much for your time, Gordon Houlden.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Catherine.